It's Dumisani Washington of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, with our partners at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, here in Jerusalem, talking to different voices throughout the Israeli community. And we are so excited to have Elias Dandeker here of the B'nai Israel community. I just had the opportunity to meet him today. He's been placed on our time we've been here for a week, just making this content, wanting to share with the rest of the world voices and faces of Israel that you may not have already seen and may not know. So first of all, Elias, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me here.
I recognize that it was a long drive for you. Where you came from, what town?
I just came from Eilat. It's the most southern city in Israel.
Okay.
I was just there with my wife, so I just arrived directly here to Jerusalem.
Drove all the way from Eilat to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So we're so glad that he's actually here and just what I've heard is already fascinating. I've only known about the Indian Jewish community, in terms of India, the Burma or whatever region, in terms of, I've only known about the B'nai Menashe. I didn't know, only recently that I known about the B'nai Israel, which is not the same community, a separate community, right? And that there are different communities of the Jewish people in India or in the region. So I want you to first of all tell us who you are, give us a little background, and we kind of get into it a little bit.
Okay, sure. I'm Elias Dandeker, as you said. Mm-hmm. I'm a member of the B'nai Israel community, which is one of the largest Hebrew community from the Indian subcontinent. We have around 5 different communities, probably even more. Mm-hmm. And I'm a writer. I published around 5 books until now, and took part in several other books. I have an archive, a vast archive about Indian Jewry, and specifically about the B'nai Israel of India. I'm a publisher. I have my own publishing house. It's called Kamadan Mukadam Publishing House. And it's a title from the presidents of the community, the leaders of the community from the 18th century. I'm a descendant of them. So I use those phrases. And I also write articles, so I'm also a journalist. I also partake in art projects, specifically classical art photography, and sometimes I also act on stage. I just played a leading role in a play dealing with the son of the Rambam, Maimonides. So yeah, I played his son Abraham. And I have different projects here and there, and also I'm part of several new groups actually, and I took part in establishing some groups that bring forth actually our culture, our Jewish Indian culture, our B'nai Israeli culture into mainstream Israel and the world, like the Malidah ceremony that we have, dealing with Elijah the prophet. And so today I'm the vice CEO of an organization called Masale, which is led by a person called Golan Tsariker. And we bring our culture to the masses,
Amazing.
Out of the darkness into the light.
Okay, so amazing. So we're going to start unpacking. So there's so much that's there. First of all, in terms of your community, the B'nai Israel, when we were talking a little bit beforehand, you went all the way back to World War I and the British, and how some of the B'nai Israel came to what was called British Mandate Palestine later on. Then, so is that your family goes back to that time in terms of returning to the land, if I should say that?
As most people know, the British controlled most of the world a few centuries ago, and also they controlled most of India. And my family were part of the militias, actually, that were serving under the British Crown, and before that under the Mughal Muslim Crown, and also under the Hindu Maratha Empire. So they served in the British Army, at least from the 18th century. And in the First World War, there was the battle for Jerusalem, for Beersheba, for Haifa, and all that. And some of my family members came as soldiers, as officers in the British Territorial Army. And they marched in Jerusalem in 1917 with General Allenby, who took Jerusalem from the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, as some people refer to them. So, but my family came also before. I mean, members of the B'nai Israel community came also before. The first hard evidence we have is from 1855. They had visited Jerusalem. Then again, 1880, there was two people, two persons. One of them his name was Dr. Shikulker, another was Mr. Gosalker. This the surnames of the Bnei Israel community, some of them.
Wow.
And they came in 1880. They traveled around the country and they wrote about it. They wrote a journal and it was published in 1887. Again, 1894, a couple came, the Pingles, and so on and so forth. We have documentation. I actually wrote an article about it.
Wow.
So
Wow.
we always prayed. I mean, when a person talks about the Jews of India, so there are different communities.
Okay.
Because the Indian subcontinent was vast, different independent countries, principalities, kingdoms, empires along the ages.
Okay.
So there is the Bnei Israel community,
Okay.
which is my community, which is the largest of the Indian Jewry communities.
Okay. Okay.
We trace our history back to around 175 BC to a group of 14 shipwreck survivors that came from the Galilee into Egypt. From Egypt, they took ships towards India.
So this would be several years after the Bar Kokhba rebellion of the 145. So in other words, after the Roman destruction, you're saying 170
No, 175 BC.
BC. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Today
yeah,
they
yeah.
don't say, they say BCE, I think.
Yeah, BCE. Yes, sir.
changed
I'm
it,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So
So-
before that, okay, absolutely. Yes,
yeah,
sir. Yes, sir.
yeah, before that, when
Before
the
the
second
destruction
temple
of the
was,
second temple. Yes, sir.
the second temple was still working,
Yes, sir.
everything was
Absolutely.
fine.
Wow,
There
wow, wow.
was
Wow.
actually, they left in the beginning of what became the Hasmonite rebellion,
Okay.
more or less.
Yes, sir.
And the holiday of Hanukkah that we celebrate.
Yes,
we
sir.
left in the whole messy things, as we say. They left for Egypt. There was a Jewish, Hebrew community in Egypt,
Okay. Okay.
in the island of Yeb or Elephantine.
Mm-hmm.
There was another temple, a lot of the Kohanim or the priesthood
Right.
clans.
Right.
And they were supposed to be part of the priesthood clan, so they say.
Yes, sir. Yes,
They went to Egypt, and from Egypt they took ships towards India. One ship, some people suggested that left that area, went to the eastern part of Africa, and they became one of the people known as the Lamba people of East Africa,
Yes, sir.
who also claim
Yes.
Hebrew descent.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes.
and
Wow.
I do agree with that.
Yes, sir.
And then they left to India. The ship was wrecked close to the shores of what is known today as the Kunakan coast. And there were 14 survivors.
Wow.
In our chronicles, is 7 men and 7 women. And they actually consisted the base
Right.
of the Bnei Israel community, the first ones.
Wow.
And today there is a area, there is a village called Nagao,
Okay.
and there is a big monument, an obelisk, and there's the graves of the community, and there are 7 graves that are said to belong to them, actually. So it's around 2,200 years ago.
Wow. Wow.
But this is one community, my community.
Okay.
And they were based in what is today known as Maharashtra.
Okay. Okay.
But there was also the Kochini community,
Okay.
what was known in ancient times as the Shingili Jews. And they had a principality, actually, which is consisted today of the state of Kerala, in more or less south of India. There were the Baghdadis, that they came around 1600, very recent. They were called Baghdadis because they came mostly from Muslim countries or Arab-speaking countries. They came as traders. And there's the Bnei Menashe that you mentioned before.
Yes, sir.
They came from Manipur and Mizoram in the north of India, close to the Burmese border or the Myanmar border, as it's called today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And for their chronicles, as much as I know, because we gathered a group that consisted of all these different kind of groups
Wow.
of the Indian Jewry. So
Wow.
they left the area of China, as much as I remembered,
Okay.
after the persecutions of one warlord they called Kalev, which is dog, or Caleb.
Yes, sir.
And then they came to north of India.
Wow.
And there's also other different small communities, like the Sephardic Jews that came to India, Ashkenazi Jews also came to India, Persian Jews and other types.
Wow. So you're describing Jewish communities within the Indian region
Yeah, subcontinent. Yeah.
coming from different parts of the Jewish diaspora. In other
Yeah.
words, coming and at different time
And different
periods as well.
timelines. Like said,
Yeah, yeah.
the Cochini Jews,
Yes, sir.
they said that the first Cochini Jews came with the ships of King Solomon
Okay.
when he was building the temple in
Yes, sir.
Temple Mount.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The Jewish temple, so the Hebrew temple actually.
Right.
I still call it Hebrew. That's why we didn't change the names. We are
Ah.
called Bnei Israel, but all Jews are Bnei Israel.
Yes, sir.
But they
Yes, sir.
changed the name
Right.
because Jews were called from the tribe of Judah, of Judeans from the kingdom of Judah, or the region of Judah,
Yes, sir.
or the province.
Right, right.
But
right.
everyone was Bnei Israel.
Yes.
So we
The
just
northern and the southern kingdom.
yeah. Afterwards they split, but
Yes, sir.
we
Yes,
never
sir.
changed the name, so we're
Exactly.
still called Bnei Israel.
Yes, sir.
But everybody's Bnei
Yes,
Israel.
sir. Yes, sir. Wow.
So, but they arrived in different timelines. So the
Okay.
Cochini Jews, the first ones,
Okay.
they say they came in the times of King Solomon,
Okay.
and afterwards there were several waves from 372 AD,
Okay.
and also afterwards from North Africa, from
Right.
the Middle East, from Europe,
Yes,
from
sir.
Asia, other parts,
Right.
and we came 175 BCE.
Okay.
BCE.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, sorry about that. I'm still
Ooh.
kind of.
You're fine. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So, and we came 2,200 years ago.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
As I said, the Baghdadi community started to come around 1600.
Back so the Iraq, the Babylon, the Baghdadi,
but
or
it-
the
Yeah,
Yes.
they call Baghdadis.
Yes, sir. Okay.
But it's
okay.
not only from Baghdad.
Right. Okay.
Back then, there was no independent state of Iraq.
Exactly.
Just in 1920s, I think,
Okay. Yes, sir.
it
Yes, sir.
became like that more. But
sir.
from the whole area, the region, part of
Right.
the Ottoman Empire, part of
Right.
independent Muslim empires or countries or
Yes, sir.
states.
Okay.
But they were called the Baghdadis.
Okay.
They could have come from Halab in Syria, or from Baghdad itself, or from
I
Basra, or from other places.
The former Babylonian Empire area. that-
Yeah, after
yes.
the Muslim rule
Okay. Yes, sir.
of that
I
of that
see.
time, because
Yes,
it's
sir.
around 400 years ago. It's not so that long,
Right.
in
yes,
my
sir.
point of view.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yeah. Yes, sir.
And
Yeah.
and the Bnei Menashe, they said they were in China, for example, and
Okay.
they came afterwards
Okay.
to the north of India after persecutions,
Okay.
and they started to reconnect with the greater Hebrew or Jewish communities around 1954.
Mm.
It's very late. And there is also another community
Okay.
called the Bnei Ephraim or the Bnei Zion,
Okay. Okay.
and they started to reconnect into Judaism around 1981.
Mm.
So,
And that's
Really
another
recent.
region of India too, a separate
yeah,
one.
I
Okay.
think Uttar Pradesh or something, because India is a federation of states.
Okay.
So they came from another area,
Right. Right.
and sometimes there was no connection between these different
Right.
communities,
Right.
although they were all part of this
Right.
Indian Jewry, greater Indian Jewry
Right.
communities,
Wow.
because hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
it took a long time to arrive from one area to another.
Right. Right.
So I think the recorded connection that started between the communities was from 1500s
Mm.
onwards that we know of.
Right. Right.
I mean, there's some evidence for the 10th century and the 11th century also,
Okay. Okay.
but
Yeah.
we are still researching it. So
Wow. So I have two questions I want to ask at once. Of course, I can't do that, right? So even if I were bilingual, which I'm not, I couldn't do both of the things. But so there's two things I want to do. You had mentioned something about the early 1950s, there being a community, them leaving and then coming back. In terms of kind of like some protests. I want to come to that. But before I do that, let me ask this question. I'll come back to that one.
okay,
I have been told by certain people, and I've read a little bit, I don't know how accurate it is, I want to see with you, that in terms of the diaspora of the Jewish people, often, underscored by persecution, pogroms, all those things, right? The hatred of the Jewish people that becomes this universal thing in Europe, obviously. Even the Ethiopian Jews, Beta Israel, they were attacked at times, right?
Of course.
I was told that relatively the Jewish community or communities in India fared better in terms of being able to be Jews, to live their lives. What is it? But I also was at the time at you, didn't realize there were so many different Jewish communities there in India. What is your understanding of that in terms of being in a host country, being a diaspora people, right? But being in India, were you treated well, or how did it go for the Jews in India?
Specifically, the Hindu caste system.
Okay.
It consisted of different castes. So and India is a very pluralistic country.
Yes, sir.
So when my ancestors arrived,
Right.
They were treated as just another different caste of people.
Okay. Okay.
So generally speaking, they were not persecuted. We are also a minority, really. Like,
Yeah.
I think in the mid 19th century, we were around 8,000 people. That's not a lot.
Right. Right.
Talking about the greater
Yes, sir.
subcontinent.
Yes, sir.
And we were allowed, and we respected the other different communities, the Hindus or the Muslims or the Christians or the Zoroastrians and
Yes, sir.
Buddhists and others.
Yes, sir.
So we were treated more or less equally,
Mm.
and they respected us. There was a great deal of tolerance towards our community. There were some occasions that the Indian Jewry was attacked. For example, some cases regarding the Cochin Jews, but especially when the Portuguese Inquisition arrived to India.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this was an European influence coming into India, and they devastated many of the Cochin Jews,
Wow.
some accounts say.
Wow. Wow.
And their numbers dwindled until 1947. They were around 2,700.
Wow.
And they say 500 years ago, perhaps they were numbering in the hundreds or the tens of thousands,
Wow. Okay.
thousands at least.
Wow.
There's also actually, by the way, there are Christian communities
Right.
in Kerala that they said they are descendants of the Cochin Jews. They were forced to
Okay.
into converting to
Convert.
Christianity
Yes,
and
sir.
so on and so forth. And there's some persecutions
Right.
related to the sultan named Tipu, Tipu Sultan of Mysore,
Okay.
that actually my ancestors specifically fought against in 2 or 3 wars.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And it is said that he burned some of the synagogues. But other than that,
Right.
mostly
Right.
the Jews or the Hebrews or the Bnei Israeli communities
Right.
were left alone.
Wow.
We took part, if the Hindus ruled, so we
Right.
served in the Hindu army. If the Muslim ruled, we served in the Muslim army. When the British took over, we served in the British army.
Wow.
We changed our perspective depends on the ruling caste because we were small numbers,
Right.
in small numbers.
Right.
And that changed actually when Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi started the independence movement.
Okay.
There are some people, even before Gandhi,
Right. Right.
around 1857, 1858, there was the Great Indian Mutiny.
Okay.
So most of the Bnei Israelis were loyal to the British. Some of them rebelled against the British. And I had ancestors on both sides that fought each other, unfortunately.
Wow. 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 Wow.
But that changed when the Mahatma Gandhi arrived and started the movement for an independent India.
Right.
Many of my family members, and my grandfather also marched with Gandhi in the Salt March of 1930.
Wow. Wow.
And they took more active roles
Right.
for an independent India.
Wow.
Other relative members from the Irulkar family were lawyers and physicians that actually worked with Gandhi,
Wow.
Gandhiji.
Wow.
So, but mainly
Yeah.
we were unharmed. We were allowed to practice our religion, practice our rituals.
Right. Right.
There was one different thing that we did. We tried to avoid eating cows
Oh, really?
because
Okay.
cows are sacred for the Hindus. So in order to avoid,
Right.
you know,
Right. Right. Right.
uh,
So out of respect and also not avoid any type of clash or something like
yeah,
that.
of course. I'm
Yes,
saying,
sir,
okay,
yeah.
so
Okay, we won't
they
do
stopped.
that.
We weren't vegetarians.
Yeah, yes,
a lot of
sir.
people think that Indians are more vegetarian
Right,
people,
right.
and we had a lot of
Right.
vegetarian diet, but
Right. Yes, sir.
we were not vegetarians.
Yes,
as
sir.
also the Hindus, some of them
Wow.
not vegetarian.
That's amazing. So then you've confirmed for me. So then, relatively speaking,
Relatively speaking,
Every-
yeah,
they
we
were
were not
more-
persecuted.
Right,
We
yes,
were
sir.
treated as equals.
Yes, sir.
We served
right?
in high-ranking positions
Mm.
in the academy, in
Right.
the army,
Right.
in arts
Yeah.
and
Wow.
craftsmanship. So
And it's interesting that some of the persecution that did come was more exported from Portugal in terms
yeah,
of
mainly
the-
from Europe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Coming from that way, that's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so now to my second one. You had mentioned something very fascinating to me. Your descendants then returned to the land, I guess, shortly after the state of Israel has declared independence. from
Yeah,
Britain.
in 1931, they
31,
started
okay.
slowly but surely.
Okay.
There was a Zionist movement in India
Okay.
that was rejuvenated in 1918 because there was also an invitation for
Okay.
the first Zionist convention,
Ah,
Congress, the first Zionist Congress in
Yes, sir.
1897.
okay.
And,
And you all
Theodore
received
Herzl,
an invitation.
yeah, Theodore
okay, yes,
Herzl
sir.
sent an invitation to the Jewish community, the Bnei Israeli community.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They respectively declined because
Okay.
they said that they are waiting for the times of the Messiah,
Okay.
but
Yes.
they will support financially.
Okay. Okay.
So they send money, and they said, but we're waiting for the Messiah.
Okay.
Until we return back to the land of Israel.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That all changed in the First World War when soldiers and officers came and they saw the land, they saw the old yeshuv or the old settlements.
Soldiers from your community within the British Army.
That served in the
Yes,
British
sir.
Army. They
Exactly.
saw
Yes,
the
sir.
Yemenite Jews, they saw the Ashkenazi Jews, they saw Moroccan Jews, they saw the Mustarabim, which is one of the oldest Jewish communities that stayed in Israel, for example. They never left, most of them.
Yes, sir.
So they saw all these different Jews from everywhere. They saw Jerusalem, they saw Hebron.
Right.
And then emotional resurfacing of the movement of coming back.
Right.
See, all our brothers and sisters are coming from all over the world, from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, from the Americas.
Yeah.
What about us?
Wow.
We have to take part in it.
Now, Paul, that's
So,
I'm blown away. I want to keep going. So they initially declined the Zionist invitation.
We'll visit, but
Yeah.
we won't come
Yes,
and
yeah.
settle till the Messiah comes.
But
Yeah.
when the soldiers came and they saw the land, almost like a reconnection to the land.
Yes.
That was like an emotional response that maybe we need
Yeah.
to do this. That's a fascinating. I don't want to stop you, but
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing. So yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So,
Yes,
so
sir.
from 1931,
Yes, sir.
a small number started to make aliyah or immigrate
Okay.
to British Mandate Palestine, Eretz Israel.
Okay.
Before that, it was called the Great Assyria. You know,
Yes, sir.
the
Yes,
name
sir.
changed along the
Yes, sir.
ages. Sometimes I just call
Israel's
the area
enemies,
Canaan.
Israel's
so nobody
enemies
can,
changing the name from what it originally was. Yeah, yeah. Yes,
sometimes
sir.
I just refer to the land as Canaan. And just
yeah,
like,
yeah, you're making these. Yes, sir.
leave me alone. I'm a Canaanite.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yes, sir. Makes sense.
So
Yes,
from
sir.
1931, they started like
Right.
small drops.
Okay.
Started to
Wow.
come, settle,
Yeah.
take part in it.
Okay.
In 1947, 48, a group of around between 40 to 50 ex Second World War veterans, mainly combat veterans,
Okay.
armor infantry,
Wow.
from India, Jews from India, Bnei Israeli mainly, but also others. They came to fight for the Israeli independence. We have records, we're still investigating it, that around 28 of them fell in battle.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
And from 1949, the Bnei Israeli started to make aliyah, to immigrate in greater numbers, in groups. And my family started to come back in 1949.
Wow.
Unfortunately, what was later called the first civil rights protests in Israel
Okay.
occurred.
Okay.
They were led by Isaac Devecker, which is also a family member of mine.
Yes.
And a lot of the brothers and sisters of my grandmother took part in it.
Okay.
There was discrimination. We were not Ashkenazi, we were not Sephardic. So we went to the streets. But those people took part in the freedom fight for India's independence.
Right.
So they marched with Gandhi ji.
Yes, sir.
So they just sat. You know, they had the silent strikes, those silent protests. That's the name of the first protest from 1951 to 1952.
Okay. Okay.
For equal rights.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And some of them, around 575, went back to India.
Okay.
I mean, the first plane was 115, and then
Right.
largely grew to 575.
Yes, sir.
But the old promise to come back to the land of our ancestors,
Right.
where the first 14 came,
Yeah.
the first shipwreck survivors came, it was stronger. So from 1953, we started to come back.
Right.
Some didn't leave at all.
Right.
We started to come back, and between 1960 to 1964, there was the second wave of protests, led mainly by a person called Samson Kileker, which he was called the the Indian Jewish Israeli Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah,
Yes,
in the newspapers.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
I'm not inventing it.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is how he was referred to
Wow.
for equal rights,
Yes, sir.
and
Yes, sir.
I guess from 1964 onwards, more or less, we started to assimilate
Yes,
in the greater Israeli
Okay.
culture, as we say.
Right,
It was still being built by different communities, different people,
Yes, sir.
different ethnicities also, because there was not only the Hebrews or the Jews, there was Muslims, Christians,
Yes, sir.
Druze,
sir.
otherwise, and also Samaritans. And
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
which
So
kids,
I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. This is fascinating. So basically, here in the early 1950s, some of the B'nai Israel begin to make Aliyah in smaller numbers, but they begin to face discrimination, racial
Yeah.
discrimination, basically. They,
What you
like
call
said-
today racial discrimination.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were saying because, and the overarching thing seemed to be because you were not Ashkenazi or Sephardi, right?
And not Yemenite Jews. So
Yemenite,
we
yes,
were
sir.
kind of, they didn't know who we are.
So some
The
of the
majority.
discrimination came from were they questioning your Hebrew identity?
Yes.
So that's what it was.
Especially in the second wave of demonstrations from 1960 to 1964. Yeah.
Okay.
They questioned it, and we came with a lot of evidence. I mean,
Yes,
my
sir.
ancestors built synagogues from the 1700s, and some of them before.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the Jewry of India,
Right.
it's in very old
Right.
Hebrew
right.
communities,
Right.
established Hebrew communities.
Right.
But when they came here,
Right.
so in the beginning at least, there
Yes,
were a
sir.
lot of difficulties
Right.
accepting us
Right.
as
right.
different.
You know what, Eliav? What's been fascinating to me, so I'm a Christian pastor, been a supporter of Israel for a long time,
Yeah.
and of the many things that I've been fascinated about learning about both the modern state of Israel, right, and the diaspora, is that here you have this imposed exile from the Romans, right? The time of the
Some
Romans.
before, some afterwards, but yeah.
Absolutely, yes, sir. And then the ultimate destruction of the temple, the Bar Kokhba rebellion, boom, the Jewish people, with the exception of the small group that stays in the land,
Which was later on called Mustarbim.
Mustalum. Yes,
for example.
I'm glad you were telling us that part. Here's a return in that one of the things that's fascinating is that the Jewish people as a tribe, Israel as a tribe, so separated from each other for such a long time that here's this reunion, right?
Yeah.
But because it's been such a long time, here you're his brother and but they don't recognize each other, or they're not sure about each other's story. So it sounds like for your family, part of what it was that you all knew who you were.
Yeah.
And you had all, as they say on the street, all the receipts, all the everything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Herzl invited you to the Congress, but others didn't know who you were. And
Exactly.
because of that, shunned you with that. It changed, but there was initial, almost like we're related, but we don't know that we're related. So almost like a putting off. So you said because of that, some of them went back to India. Maybe were they saying that we don't want to fight, we don't want to do this, or we don't feel accepted, so therefore we're leaving? What was their mindset? when they
Mainly
left?
because they thought they're coming back and they saw their brothers and sisters from all over the world.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Different colors, but doesn't matter because
sir.
we all come from the same origin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's build our nation back
sir.
again from the ashes that
Right.
was set afire before,
Yes, sir.
thousands of years ago.
Yes, sir.
And they were discriminated. They were not accepted, so they left. I mean, they tried to stay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They went on demonstrations. As I said, the first civil rights demonstrations after the creation of the State of Israel
Right.
is the 1951 Bnei Israel demonstration, which is called the silent protests.
Silent protest.
Yeah, non-violent protests,
Right.
holding hands, going
sir.
together.
Yes, sir.
Very much like the civil rights movement in the U.S.,
Yes,
for example, in the
absolutely. Yes, sir.
1960s and even before and
Yes, sir.
afterwards.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In Selma and,
Yeah,
and other places,
absolutely.
of course.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's
yeah.
why they also saw, for example, they took examples
Right.
from Mahatma Gandhi, for
Right.
example,
Yes, sir.
and
yes,
they
sir.
marched with him in the Salt March in 1930 and
Yes, sir.
onwards,
Yes, sir.
like my
Yes, sir.
grandfather, for
Yes,
example,
sir.
and also for Martin Luther King
Yes,
in
sir.
the U.S.
Yes, sir.
They saw a joint
Right.
vision for
Wow.
equality.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And they left at the end, some of them, not
Right.
all of them, of course, they
Yes, sir.
left
Right. Right.
by the promise of our ancestors,
Yes, sir.
our mothers and fathers from old,
Right.
and Elijah the prophet, because we have a whole
Right.
whole fetish about Elijah
sir.
the prophet,
Yes, sir.
that
Yes,
it was
sir.
revealed to us. There's a place in India also,
Right.
it's a pilgrimage area.
Similar to the Druze, like a little bit, right? I know they're
Yeah.
not considered themselves Jewish, but their connection to is it to Elijah as well? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, some.
Okay, yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. Yes,
Also
sir.
to Moses or
To Mo-
Musa.
Yes, sir. Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah.
actually, some narratives of ours
Yes,
say
sir.
that we are descendant from Moses and from Aaron, the Bnei Israel.
yes, sir.
Some say,
Yes,
we
sir,
still
yes,
have
sir.
to
Yes, sir.
investigate it, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's some claims to that.
Amazing.
So yeah, and also like for example the Shomronim or the Samaritans or Shomrim,
Okay.
which is a different group
Right.
of Israelites,
Right.
but they're not in the general Jewish population, I'd
Right.
say.
Right.
And they also, I mean,
Wow.
the different narratives,
Yes, sir.
but there's a connection
Right.
between all of them.
Right. Right.
And so there were discriminations. We left, and then we said we cannot leave. We came back. But for example, today I can say that
Yeah.
in my family,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
my wider family, my cousin, second cousin, third cousin,
Yes, sir.
we are married to all the different Jewish communities
Right.
that consist the Jewish world,
Yes.
or
Yes,
from
sir.
Africa, from Asia, from Europe, from the Americas, from
Ashkenazi,
so-
Sephardi, Mizrahi, there's always
Ethiopian Jews and
Yes,
Beta
sir.
Israel,
Yes,
for
sir.
example.
Yes, sir.
But I think in the beginning, in the 1940s, 1950s,
Yes, sir.
the Beta Israel,
Yes, sir.
which were also here
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
in small numbers,
Yes,
and
sir.
also the Bnei Israel, both of us were considered kind of exotic fantasy
Yes,
that
sir. Yes,
we
sir.
heard about people, the
Right.
lost 10 tribes.
Right. Right.
Some people
right.
call me the lost 10 tribes. I'm not lost.
Right. I know exactly.
never
right.
lost.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're the lost 10 tribe, maybe, I don't know.
Right. Right.
So,
Amazing.
because in ancient times it
Right.
was more
Right.
logical
Yes, sir.
to arrive
Right.
to India
Right.
than to Germany.
Yes, sir.
I'm
Absolutely.
talking about 2,000 years ago and
Yes,
more.
sir.
I mean more, like
Absolutely.
3,000 years ago.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
Wow. So then they left and they came back. So basically, so you're saying they came back saying, "This is our homeland. We're going to return." They
Yes.
left because they were disappointed with what happened, how they were
Yes.
discriminated
Yes,
against, but they
exactly.
thought they returned back. Sounds like pretty soon, or maybe about a year or two or so. They came.
yeah, because they were
Yeah.
disillusioned also
Yes, sir.
because they were labeled as troublemakers when they went back to India.
Right.
Why did you do
Right.
this?
Right.
Why did you do this? People didn't understand.
Right.
And also the ancient promise. The
Right.
main thing is the promise
Yes,
of
sir.
our ancestors that came from generation to generation.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Yes,
we
sir.
pray in the synagogues or we pray at home.
Right.
We do the ceremonies, the Malida ceremony that I said. It's an ancient ceremony of peace offering.
Okay.
And we always pray for Elijah the prophet and our return. So how can we
Right. Wow.
just forget about it after 2,200 years?
Right. Right.
So they started to come back.
So what's also amazing, I want to revisit this one last thing,
Yeah.
one time, because again, that still blows me away, that the soldiers come. First of all, there's a general understanding in the community that when Messiah comes, we will come. We will return to the land. He'll bring us to the land. But again, they see the land. They see the different parts of the Jewish community in the land, and they feel such a connection that's there that they begin to come. Was there debate? Do you, maybe in your records or something, was there a debate? In other words, obviously this is a change of mind, right? A teshuva, if you will, right? A turning.
Yeah.
Was there a debate because of that? Were some of them still not wanting to do that?
Well, of course, there was a debate,
Okay.
but the enthusiasm that the first ones, as I said before, there was also other passengers, Bnei Israeli passengers that came in the middle 19th century and they started to talk about it, write about it. And in the opening of the Suez Canal, it was faster to arrive here.
Wow.
In the ports of Jaffa or...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, and Jerusalem, the city, they would pray for, the city of heaven, with the streets filled of gold, as they were thinking.
Sir. Wow.
So, this ancient promise was very strong, especially in the younger generation, the younger crowd that served as officers or soldiers in the British Empire and came here.
Okay.
And some of them actually, unfortunately, shell-shocked when they came back. There is one captain that he took photos of Israel during the First World War of this area.
Yes, sir.
And he served in the Battle of Beersheba and other places. He was shell-shocked, but he photographed this area. He wrote about this area. His name was Captain Bamnulker. He was a doctor also. And he passed away when he was 36, very young, with little kids.
Wow.
And because he was shell-shocked and the effects of the war.
Wow.
But his photographs, his words carried on,
Wow.
as well as others.
Right.
So the debate,
inspiring another generation that they
they
see
said the
this.
times of the Messiah have arrived
Wow.
because they saw Hebrews from all over the world, from all over the corners of the world, gathering back together as a nation.
Wow.
So that is, generally speaking, what convinced also the older generation that this is the times of the Messiah.
Right. So it's
These are
funny
the times,
that theological adjustment. In other words, instead of the literal Messiah bringing us to the land, almost like a spirit of a time, an era of a messianic era of Messiah bringing. So it's almost like they, in seeing that, they said because we're physically seeing our brothers and sisters from literally all over the world return. So this feels like this is a Messiah move. It sounds like what you're describing.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
maybe some said also that
Yes, sir.
the sheer action that we are returning
Yes,
back
sir.
to the motherland
Yes, sir.
or the fatherland.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So these will bring
Wow.
the hasten the times
Wow.
of the Messiah actually.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Wow.
So and actually
Yeah.
in the Bnei Israelis, for example, they used to say that Ima Hodu Abba Israel. That means that Mother India, Father Israel. We had like the duality of this.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Because we were respected in India, we were
Yeah.
treated as equals.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So we were Indians, but we were also Israelites.
Wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
returning back home, so it was kind of a
You remind me of some of my Persian Jewish friends who said that life was relatively okay until the revolution of the Ayatollahs.
the '79 revolution.
Yes,
yeah.
sir. And then everything changed, of course, for everyone, not just obviously the Jewish people, but everything changed. And then there was more of this is not our homeland
Anymore, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, there was, because the Bnei Israelis were not only in India,
Yes, sir.
or what was considered the British Raj of India.
Okay.
We were also in Aden in Yemen, for
Okay.
example. There was a community of Bnei Israelis from India.
Okay.
Also in Karachi,
Okay.
in modern-day Pakistan,
Okay. Wow.
and
wow.
also in Burma.
Yes, sir.
But for example, I can say about the Bnei Israelis from Pakistan, what became Pakistan,
Yes, sir.
the 1947 partition of India and Pakistan
Yes, sir.
brought with it a lot of, unfortunately, anti-Semitic attacks in Pakistan. The
Okay.
establishment of the State of Israel,
Right.
the ongoing emotions against Jews from other parts of the world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the Karachi Bnei Israeli were, and my grandfather, my mother's father, he came from Karachi.
Okay.
They left, they ran away.
Mm.
There was the expulsion of Jews,
Mm.
first in 1947, and then in 1967 after the Six-Day War
Yes, sir.
in
Yes,
Israel,
sir. Yes, sir.
in this area.
Yes, sir.
And the synagogue was destroyed.
Wow. Wow.
In 1988, it was completely destroyed.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
The cemetery is still there, the Bnei Israeli cemetery. I have contacts with some people there, and it's very difficult. I mean, my great-grandfather is buried there.
Wow. Wow.
And I went to India, and I documented around 100 cemeteries,
Wow.
between 5,000 to 7,000 tombstones, the synagogues, the community. But I can't go across the border and just photograph my great-grandfather's tombstone.
Wow.
And it's still there.
Wow.
And the Jews they just fled, or the Bnei Israeli, they fled
Right.
from Pakistan, unfortunately.
Right.
And sometimes they were attacked because
sir.
some of the Hindus
Right.
thought they were Muslims,
Right.
and they attacked them, and some of the Muslims thought they were Hindus. They were kind of
Right.
caught between both
Yeah.
worlds
Wow.
back then. So,
That's amazing.
and there's still some Jews left in Pakistan today, but
Pakistan,
it's
right.
unofficial.
Mm.
Some of them hiding their identity,
Wow.
and the whole history is almost untold.
Wow.
Because generally speaking, I can say I'm a Hebrew also from Pakistan, also from India.
Right.
Because my grandfather is, so therefore other grandfather is from there.
Right.
But it's the same community.
Right. Do you, in your speaking and lecturing in this amazing book, I wish I could read it, he would just look so beautiful. First of all, tell us the title of it. I'm sharing it on the screen there. What's the name?
It's called the Jamat, Inspirational People from the Bnei Israel Community, both women and men. There were leaders from 300 years ago, 200 years ago, 100 years ago.
Wow.
Some of them younger than me that live today.
Wow.
And I took, like, for me, what is inspiring, because we are diverse people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
From the religious point of view,
Yes, sir.
from secular point of view,
Yes, sir.
from the political point of view, from a gender point of view.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We are so diverse, but
Yes,
we
sir.
are Bnei Israelis. So I took inspirational people that I interviewed, or that of course, people 300 years ago, so
Right. Yes,
for
sir.
the historical
Wow.
information.
Wow.
And I worked with an artist called Dev Yaakov Awasker, a friend of mine. He's an artist. He sketched 50
Wow.
different individuals,
Amazing.
and I wrote like short biographies of each of them,
Yeah.
and they're part in history,
Wow.
in Jewish history, in Indian history, in world history. So different sketches and different.
And this is.
This is actually the first president of the Bnei Israel community. His name is Samuel Ezekiel Diveker, or Samaji Hasaji Diveker. as they used to pronounce his name. He died in 1796, and actually he's my 7th grandfather.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow, wow,
he's my
wow.
ancestor, and he was the first president of the Bnei Israel community
Right.
from 1784.
Yes,
He
sir.
built the first synagogue in Bombay, or Mumbai, as it's called today, in 1796.
Okay.
And he was slashed, murdered, killed, poisoned, or passed away
Oh, wow.
in a city called Irnakulam in Cochin, where his tombstone was found just a few months ago.
Really?
His original tombstone, I was looking for it
Wow.
for 12 years. I
Wow.
found a tombstone,
Wow.
and now I need to know how I can preserve it, save it, bring it, I don't know.
Wow, that's amazing.
And his grave was found as well.
Wow.
It was neglected, it was forgotten, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
What I did when I went to India
Okay.
is to really document
Right.
our culture, our history, also the people. There's still like around 4,000 Bnei Israelis live in India.
In India, okay. Yes, sir.
In Israel, we are around 85,000,
Okay,
you know.
okay.
But
Yes, sir.
from all the different communities also,
Right,
because we
right.
married, as I said, Bnei Menashe,
Yes.
Ashkenazi Jews,
sir.
Ethiopian Jews, other
Yes,
Jews.
sir. Yes, sir.
And
Oh, wow.
for
Amazing.
example, my wife is an Ashkenazi Jew.
Yes, sir.
Einat she's a
sir.
descendant of the Baal Shem Tov, one of
Mm.
the leading rabbis of the Hasidic movement.
Ah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
From that.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah. So,
That's amazing.
and what I did, I went to India. I wanted to document it before it all disappears,
Yes,
because our cemetery, the community left, so the
Right.
cemeteries are
sir. Right,
or overtaken by the jungles and
Right.
shrubbery, or
right.
just land developers. They were
Wow.
destroyed. I saw
Yeah.
tombstones from the 17th, from the 1600s,
Wow.
just being destroyed. I took photo and it was
Yeah.
destroyed. So I documented it.
Right.
I documented the synagogues,
Mm.
which don't have what we call a minyan.
Okay.
Need like 10 people
Yes,
to
sir.
in order to make a
Right,
prayer. Yeah.
Right, right. Yes, sir.
And you don't find it anymore.
Wow.
There is an area where my ancestor that you showed before,
Yes, sir.
he built a synagogue, the first synagogue in Bombay.
Okay.
It's called Israel Mohalla, the neighborhood of the Israel.
Wow.
We call it the Israel.
Wow.
And
Wow,
today, like, there is no, maybe one family, maybe even not then.
Wow. Wow.
And there is not, the synagogues are being closed.
Yes, sir.
Some of them are not being preserved even, being destroyed. Some of them are landmarks,
Yes,
but
sir. Yes, sir.
still, it's like crumbling into dust.
When you lecture and you share this information and everything, and do you do it in Israel primarily, or do you travel outside to other nations and everything? How, when you're sharing it, who is your main target audience?
Well, before COVID, I used to travel around the world
Yes, sir.
and lecture in India, lecture in other places,
Oh,
in
wow.
Europe, and
Yes, sir.
I lectured also in Australia, I think, once.
Okay.
But after COVID,
Yeah.
you know, and after the discovery of the Zoom, or, you
Yes,
know,
sir.
so it's from,
Yes, sir. The
from the
virtual
comfort
meeting.
of my home. So I do lecture around the world.
Okay. Okay.
I started to lecture for our younger generation of the Bnei Israelis that
Right.
as a child, I was never taught at school, high school, university, and I was taught about my community,
Right. Right.
talking about the creation of Israel.
And you were born in Israel.
I was born in Israel.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My great-grandparents were part of the founders of the city of Or Akiva, for example, in Israel,
Okay.
where my grandmother, their daughter, and my grandfather, and everybody who lived and
Right.
passed away, unfortunately,
Yes, sir.
as
Yes,
time
sir.
does.
Yes, sir.
And so I said, but where is my history? Why aren't I in the textbooks?
Right. 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 Right.
Where is my family? Where is my community? At home, I heard stories. My grandfather was a storyteller.
Right.
So he's talking about the survivors of the shipwreck, and
Right.
this, and the queen of that, and the king of that, and
Right.
the leader, and the Raja of this. And I said, okay, I'm hearing all these stories at home.
Right.
I'm not seeing it outside.
Right. Right.
Not on the television,
Right.
not in the computer, not in the books.
Yes,
Where
sir.
is it?
Wow.
And when I was in high school, I was around 16, 17.
Okay.
I was in the library and I saw a book, an old book,
Okay.
the Jewish communities around the world. I was looking for the Indian community.
Right.
And I saw a short like reference to this ancestor that you
Right.
showed.
Wow.
I saw a name of my ancestor. My eyes were lit. My soul was on fire. I mean,
Wow.
I just took it.
Wow.
I said, sorry.
It's mine.
And it's mine. It's my
Right,
ancestor.
it's a-
My
wow.
birthright.
Right. Right.
So I
wow.
took it.
Wow. Wow.
And I said, but this short line,
Wow.
where are our books? Where is our history? Where is our culture?
Right.
So I
Right.
started by telling people. I started by writing. I started by sharing.
Right. Right.
Not everybody liked it. So my first lecture in university, for example, was around 2010, 2011
That was where was that?
in the Tel Aviv University.
Tel Aviv. Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So one of the lecturers, and that was a class about the Jewish diaspora.
Okay. Okay.
And I was lecturing. Everybody had to lecture about their own heritage or whatever.
Right.
So I lectured about the Bnei Israelis, my heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting with the lecturer, the professor, and he was talking to me about, I think you're over-glorifying your community. I said, am I over-glorifying?
Right.
So I brought a ton of information.
Wow.
This is over-glorifying?
Wow.
And he was like stunned. I said,
Wow.
okay.
Wow.
Because you don't understand in one subject, you don't know,
Right.
doesn't mean you can not learn.
Right.
We can learn in any age, in any position, in
Yes, sir.
any place.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
wow.
I started to lecture
Yes, sir.
from, in the beginning, for the younger generation of the Bnei Israel. Then I started to lecture for the wider Israeli public, and then I
Right.
started to lecture
Right.
in Indian academic places,
Right.
to other scholars, and I lectured in Europe.
Mm.
There is one a group called the Kesher,
Okay.
that a lot of people come from all over the place,
Mm.
all over the world, sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
I started, because I'm also a disabled war veteran, so I started to talk about with other, with Muslims and with Christians, and to reconnect, to bring more a connection, to see our not to put the emphasis only on differences,
Right,
but the
right.
similarities.
Right. Right. It's amazing.
So yeah,
Have you lectured in the States before?
I wrote actually my first article.
Okay.
It was in 2005.
Okay.
After I finished my army service, I worked on cruise ships as a security officer and chief security officer.
Right.
And there was a group of American Jews,
Okay.
and they came and they saw we Israelis, and we spoke Hebrew, of course.
Right.
And they said, "Well, are you a Yemenite?"
Right.
And I said, "No, I'm a Bnei Israeli Jew." What is that?
Mm.
I said, "Well, my ancestors came from India." They're Jews in India? I said, "Yes." They're even Jews in Ethiopia. And they didn't understand. I was a little bit sarcastic. And they said,
Right.
"We heard about them, the legends." I said, well, Indiana Jones. I mean, what are you talking about?
Right.
It's obvious. Everybody knows about it.
Right,
I mean, you
right.
just open a book. It's your own people.
Right.
Learn about your people.
Right.
And then one person found it very interesting, and he said he's writing for. It was a long time ago. I don't know if he's still with us. I mean,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
sorry if.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So there was a magazine or a newspaper called the Lapid, which is the Torch.
Okay.
And he heard that I talked to these people, and I said I'm a Bnei Israeli, and I knew a lot about our culture because my grandfather used to tell the stories again and again, and just
Right.
repeating it.
Wow.
And so, and I said that my grandfather was a very dark-skinned man with blue eyes. He said, "It's not possible." And I showed them a picture. My grandfather was.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
they didn't understand, and I explained because
Right.
I had this knowledge,
Yes, sir.
and he heard it,
Right.
and he asked me to write an article. So I wrote my first article to this American newspaper.
Wow.
I'm not sure if they published it, but I did write the article.
Right.
So that was my first time. But I did lecture afterwards
Okay.
in groups that consisted, also in the U.S. through Zoom,
Okay.
mainly.
Okay. Yes, sir.
The U.S., Canada,
Yes, sir.
also
Yes, sir.
Brazil, for example. So.
So now, after that first experience that you described in Tel Aviv, where you got a little pushback from the professor, right? Generally now, as you lecture, wherever it is, right, whether it's in the West or whatever, what is the response to you generally when they're hearing the information?
Well, mostly I think that people have this conception
Okay.
about how does a Jew look like.
Right.
For example, especially, I'm sorry to say, especially in the U.S.
Especially in the U.S.
You know, what you see in Hollywood is
yes, sir.
is
He doesn't look like Jerry Seinfeld or...
for example, he's a white-skinned Jew, is
Yes,
not
sir.
good at sports,
Yes,
and
sir.
is complaining a lot, and they control this and Hollywood
Yes,
or
sir.
whatever.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And when a person like me comes along,
Right.
or an Ethiopian Jew, or a Yemenite Jew,
Right.
or a Bnei Menashe
Yes, sir. Yes,
Jew,
sir.
and
Yes,
they
sir.
say, "Are you really Jewish?
Right.
Are you sure?
Mm.
Did your ancestors prayed for the gods of snake, the gods of the snakes?" I mean,
Right.
I respect
Right.
all religions,
Yes, sir.
and some
Yes.
of the religions do pray for
Yeah.
to the snakes and
Yes.
everything. But we were Hebrews
Right.
all along the way,
Right. Right.
and people say, even in Israel, sometimes
Right.
they ask me, "Where am I from?
Right.
Am I a dark-skinned
Yeah.
Chinese person.
Right,
And
right.
where did I come from? Usually they say Yemenite because
Yes, sir. Yes,
they
sir.
know more about the Yemenite Jews.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I said the Bnei Israel of India.
Wow.
There are Jews in India?
Wow.
It's like a revelation.
Right.
Say, why is it a revelation? If I would say I'm a Jew from Germany or a Jew from Poland or,
Right, right.
or a Jew from Spain,
Right.
it was not a revelation.
Right.
So why is a Jew from India or Ethiopia
Right.
or Nigeria is a
Right.
revelation? Why?
Mm.
So, but this is one of the reasons I went into this. And that's why they also asked me from universities in Israel, and they have my books in universities in Israel and
Wonderful.
universities in the US
Yes,
and
sir.
Canada and Australia and
Yes, sir.
in the
Yes,
UK.
Yes, sir.
And they asked me to lecture
Right.
about the history because I also have the references, I
Yes,
have
sir.
the
Yes,
knowledge, I have also the evidence.
Right. Right.
And I think more and more, that's why I also lectured in India, for example, because in India,
Right.
the country that my family came from,
Right. Right.
most people in India don't know about the Indian Jews or the Indian Hebrews.
Mm.
They don't know about Bnei Israeli or Kuchini or Bnei Menashe.
Mm.
And when I talk about it, they were fascinated.
Wow. Wow.
And when I went to the villages
Right.
and was looking on the hunt for cemeteries, for example,
Right.
only the elder people knew. I saw like people like they were in their 90s with a white mustache and a dark skin coming in.
Mm.
You are from the Israel. Go to the mountain there and you find it. And
Wow,
I went
wow.
and I found, I found
Right.
graves and I found
Wow.
the Star of David and everything.
Wow.
So I think more and more people are
Right.
becoming more aware
Mm.
that Jews
Right.
or Hebrews look very much different than what they think
Right.
we look like.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Because we do come from everywhere. The diaspora was everywhere. There was also movements, for example, in the 1930s and before in the 1930s, but also in the 19th century, of people from African Americans. For example, they said they are descendants
Yes, sir.
from
Yes,
the
sir.
tribes of Israel.
Yes,
They
sir.
were kidnapped and and they were forced into slavery in
Yes, sir.
America.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's not for nothing. They say,
Yes, sir.
like when Moses was in Egypt, let my people go.
Yes, sir.
All
Yes,
these
sir.
songs. It's not only
Absolutely.
because they got expelled. Some of them.
Absolutely. Yes,
I
sir.
mean, we are brothers and sisters of the same
Yes,
of
sir.
the same nation.
Absolutely.
There was an actor, an American actor. He passed away just recently. Forgot his name.
Black American actor.
A black American actor, yeah.
Not Sidney Poitier.
Not Sidney Poitier. He came from the
Yes.
Caribbean. I mean,
Yeah,
he was born
yeah.
in the U.S. but came from the Caribbean.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yefet
sir.
Koto.
Oh, right. Yes, sir.
Yefet
Yes, sir.
Koto.
Igbo, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
also he talked about his Hebrew
Yes, sir.
ancestors.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And
Yes.
people were looking at him, and
Yes,
he
sir.
talked about that he was going with a yarmulke
Yes, sir.
or a kippah, as we call it, and
Yes,
they
sir.
said, "How can you be
Right.
a Jew? You're black."
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And
Absolutely.
you
Yes,
can
sir.
see there's a lot of Jewish black communities or
Yes,
black
sir.
Jewish communities
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
in the U.S.
Yes,
or
sir.
in
Yes,
the
sir.
Caribbean,
Right.
going back for
Yes, sir.
centuries.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And sometimes when I talk about it, people
Right.
say, it's fantasy, it's not true, they came after. I said, no,
Right.
there's research, read about it.
Right. Right.
It's
Absolutely.
there. Just look
Absolutely.
for it. And today we have books, about this subject, about the Bnei Israeli subject,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
about
Yes, sir.
other communities also in China, the Kaifang Jews,
Yes, sir.
for example,
Absolutely.
and
Wow. Yes, sir. Yes,
all,
sir.
I mean, the Hebrew nation went
Yeah.
all over the world. There's
Right.
not one place
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
that we didn't go.
Right.
I mean, from
Right.
South America before the discovery of
Mhm.
by
Right.
the
Right.
by the Spaniards,
Exactly.
and in
Yeah.
North America, in Europe, in
Right.
Africa, in Asia, in Australia.
Mm.
I mean, even the Maori
Mm.
some of them have traditions that go into the tribe of God, for example.
Mm.
And because I worked abroad for 5 years, so I talked to people, and
Right.
all of a sudden people started to talk about it. I sat with people from Afghanistan, the Pashto or the Pathan, as they call it in India, the Pashtuns,
Right.
and they were talking about traditions. They were Hebrew,
Mm.
and the Afridi tribe, which is Ephraim, and Ephraim.
Right.
And so we went all over the place, and you can find it in archaeology, you can find it in different communities, you can find, I don't know.
It's
Like,
amazing.
so,
So, whenever these type of conversations are happening, and there's so much rich content, I could do for hours and hours. So
Yeah.
I am gonna have to land a plane.
We gotta- yeah. We
But
gotta
I
finish.
wanna do this. A couple things. We're almost there. So you're doing, you're sharing this. Yes, we work with the various Jewish communities within the United States, everything, and there's even Black Americans who, whether they trace their ancestry like to the Igbo or not, some of them have felt such a call, and they've converted to Orthodox Judaism. They've done
Some of
different
them,
things,
yeah.
all of these types of things, right? And so this is absolutely this is a discussion that's being had more and more in the United States. Tell me, when you're doing this, let me ask you this question as it pertains to Israel, the nation.
Okay.
Right? As you obviously you're born and raised here, you served in IDF and everything, so you're well aware of what the West, or what we call the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You're aware of all of that. You served and everything. And you're also, I'm sure, aware of the Israel being called an apartheid state, all these types of things, ideologically how it's attacked. Your family, your heritage, your own personal experience with everything. What is it that you want people to know about the land in which you were born, your homeland, the Hebrews from which you descended? When you're hearing it, whether it's negative stuff, whether it's United Nations attacking Israel, that type of thing, what is it that you want people, particularly in the West, in particular, as you said, in the U.S. as well, because there's a big ideological fight.
Yeah.
What do you want them to know about your homeland?
I want people to know the place they're talking about, to know the people they're talking about. Also, of course, the Jews, and also the Muslims, and also the Christians here.
Yes, sir.
And because people sometimes have their opinions, or they forge their opinions without even knowing
Right.
all the sides. You can hear there are different sides, not only two sides. There are many sides.
Right.
You need to learn about it. And when I served in the IDF, I served in Gaza, also as a regular soldier, and also in the reserves. I fought several wars. I was injured in combat several times. And also my father before me. He served in Lebanon. He served in Yom Kippur War, 73. He served in the trenches of the Hatashah War in 68 until 70. And he told me, I grew up in a pluralistic country. He had friends in the same building. There were Muslims, there were Hindus, there were Zoroastrians, there were Christians, and he ate with them, he sat with them, he played with them. They didn't care he's a Jew or Bnei Israeli or... And when people talk about Israel, saying that yes, there are problems, yes, there is prejudice, yes, we need to work about it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And about color, about, I'm talking, when there were the bomb attacks, and I was looked upon as well because of my darker skin and my beard, and said, they looked at me as well as a hazard. And I was sometimes, actually, I'm going to tell you, I was attacked by some Israeli Jews that thought I was an Arab, and I was attacked by Israeli Arabs that thought I was a Jew. So I was attacked with both sides, and I was looking at myself. Why can't we just stop and talk? Of course, there is a war. It's not perfect. But Israel is much more than that. I mean, you can be, in one point, you can be whomever you want here. Another point, there is discrimination. So it's not,
absolutely.
It's not just one-sided or two sides. It's many sides. People need to know how the life in Israel is. When I was in the U.S., for example, I lived there for a while. Working on the cruise ships and everything, they thought I was living in a tent and I had a camel. There are camels in Israel. The desert is in Israel. There are tents in Israel. There are different communities in Israel. There's also snow from Hermon Mountain, and sometimes in Jerusalem. There are forests. There are Jews, there are Muslims, there are Christians, there are Druze. I served with Druze people. I served with Muslims in the IDF, for example. I served with Christians. I serve with many different types of I don't know, types of people, because we are all the same. Doesn't matter our color, our religion, our creed, our sexual orientation. Doesn't matter. We are all part of the greater humanity. So if people want to understand about Israel, they should see all the sides. I don't think there is a right and a wrong, but there are people that don't talk to each other, and then becomes a matter of prejudice. And but if you go in a party, for example, in Beersheba or in Tel Aviv or in the north, in the forest or whatever, you see people from all types and shapes and sizes and colors and creeds and religions dancing together. You see people are friends from different parts. I mean, we sit together, we talk about the problems, and we talk about the coming back together. And this is also one of the reasons I talk so much about my community, because we lived in a pluralistic place. There is no reason it can be here as well. I mean, you go around in hospitals, you see Muslim doctors, you see Jewish doctors, you see doctors from the Jews of Ethiopia, you see doctors from the Jews of Russia, you see, from all over the place, from Nazareth, from Christians, Muslims. You see commanders that are Jews in the police forces or in the army or in politics. Also in politics. I mean, the Israeli parliament consists of, yes, Jews, women, men, Muslims, Druze, So the diversity here is so abundant, I think, that people don't see it. For example, yeah, it's not perfect. But yes, there's a lot of openness here. You can be a LGBT and go around and compared to some other countries around us, or not only around us, And you can also be attacked. It is possible, but it's also possible to go around freely. That's why I have friends from all the different communities, different religions, different creeds, and sometimes we talk about also my army service, because I served in Gaza. I fought. I was a short-range assault sniper. But I do believe in peace. I want to talk. I want to lay down the guns. Let's talk. Let's get to know each other, because we have a joint history. I don't think, from my point of view, this country belongs to us and you out. No. Let's talk together. Let's live together. Doing it, it's complicated. But what the world shows about Israel is like, people told me, why don't you go back to Germany or Russia? I said, I never came from Germany or Russia.
I'm not from there.
Yeah, I never came from Germany or Russia.
Wow.
You're a Jew because you're... The conceptions people have is because of the lack of knowledge. I mean, all of us are part of this country. Doesn't matter how you call this country. Parts of it, you can call it Israel, parts of it you can call it Palestine, you can call it Canaan, you can call it the Greater... It doesn't matter. The name changed during the ages, but we're all part of this place that consists of all of us. So I think that if people are more open to knowledge, to history, to the openness that there's more than one opinion or two opinions or 10 opinions. We can find a way to converge together and sit around the table. And what people, sometimes when I go outside the country, people look at me in despise because I'm Hebrew or because I'm Israeli. And sometimes people think I'm Muslims and they look at me and despise. So I'm saying, why should people, a person that doesn't know me even, look at me in this way? It doesn't matter if I'm a Jew or I'm a Muslim or a Christian or a Buddhist. It doesn't matter. And in Israel, you can see all of us sitting together. You can see the wars. That's one side. I'm not ignoring it. But you can see also the peace in the same time. People listen to television too much, I think. What they showed on television, it's like, that's what's going on there. You should see the place. You should learn the place. Research for yourself. I went to university, and sometimes the professor didn't know what I'm talking about. So I researched it.
Absolutely.
So do your own research. Don't believe me only. I mean, believe yourself.
Wow.
So.
Well, Eliav, I want to thank you again, first of all, again, for coming all the way. I know this is going to be probably the first of other conversations we're going to have, because the information you have is pertinent, it's fascinating, and hopefully we can connect again in the near future. I want to do this. First of all, tell us the name of the book again, please.
It's called The Jamat Inspirational People from the Bnei Israeli Community.
And they can get it in the local bookstores here in Israel?
Yeah. Some of them are still have few copies, because it's my 5th book.
Okay.
I have several more books.
Okay, yes, sir. So for those of you who are asking about this particular one, there's a few more copies left. He's writing a new one, and those of you who may be watching this and you're not in Israel, and it's too bad. Maybe his next one, it'll be more available. I know you're doing local bookstores and things like that. But I'm assuming that sometimes when you travel, you take some with you to sell. Okay.
I'm working on translating my books into English and into different Indian languages like Marathi or Hindi or something like that. And
it's fascinating. I know this is the preservation of your people, your community within Israel. But as the people who've been listening to this know, you're fascinated whether you're Jewish or not, whether you're Hebrew or not. This is a fascinating discussion about the tribes of Israel and about the return to the land and the diaspora and everything. And for those of you, particularly religious, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, who have those religious discussions about Jerusalem and about the people of God, this is just an amazing thing. So I want to thank you for coming and talking with us. We've learned so much. I've learned so much. I have even so much more questions, but I have to end it. So, but this is amazing. I've learned so many things about the B'nai Israel. I knew a little bit about B'nai Menashe, but even that has been expanded so much, and I know that everyone appreciates it as well. This is, again, the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. We thank you for watching again. A shout out to Dan Diker, who's the new president of the JCPA, and the vision to just allow and continue to have Jerusalem be a place for all nations to come and to partake and to learn and to see. Israel has so much to offer the world. Also, on the behalf of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, I hope this has been helpful to you. We will be here. If you're watching this in time before March, there's an Africa-Israel Security Conference at the end of March. I will return to Jerusalem, God say the same, with my wife for that conference. And hopefully while I'm here, get a chance to scout around a little, maybe even look up Eliab. I'll have to return.
I'll be happy to. Yeah, of course.
But thank you so much for coming. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this content, again, has been helpful to you. I know it's been fascinating to me. And go to jcpa.org and check out, so you can find out more of the resources there. Go to ibsi.org if you want to know more about our organization there as well in the States. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks.